Dario Amodei is the CEO of Anthropic. He's also, I think, one of the most vocal truth tellers about the good, the bad, and the potential ugly and destruction from AI.
We had a spur-of-the-moment chance to talk to Dario. His memo was out. We said we wanted to go a little deeper with him. The way that Dario says it, 5 words: humanity needs to wake up.
Last year, when he made that warning that 50% of white-collar jobs could be obsolete within a couple years because of AI, he ignited a national conversation. With this memo, he's taking a different track. He's trying to say it's not just jobs. It could be your national security. It could be your way of life. And it was written to be provocative. It is provocative.
One of his biggest warnings, along with authoritarian governments, was AI companies. He said, it's awkward for me to say this as the head of an AI company, but look at all of the users that they have. Look at all the data centers they have. Look at all the power they have. And what if they were to brainwash this massive consumer use base? That was new to me, Jim.
This is a wake-up call that people need to answer. They need to listen. You might be skeptical, you might be scared, you might be enthusiastic. What Dario has to say is important. And by the way, it synthesizes provocatively, but I think accurately, what we hear in conversation after conversation with other people. It's not him just being hysterical. I don't think it's him just hyping the technology. I think it is he reflects a concern we hear time and time again, at least in off-the-record conversations with the people that are building these technologies and using them. And we wanted to go beyond the memo. We wanted to talk specifically about what message, if it was delivered in its bluntest form, would Dario want to deliver to members of Congress and members of the federal government, because they play such an integral role in regulating the technology, but also in informing their citizens and their constituents. What are the 3 things that you wish Congress would do now? And then also, what do you wish they would tell their constituents if they were really fluent on what's going on and they were completely leveling with them?
Yeah, so I think 3 things to do now. One would be like transparency legislation, as robust as possible. What tests did you run? What are you seeing with respect to your model? Companies have the capability to study these things, and they often do. And so kind of, requiring that they not only study these risks, but show those risks to the public, put a label on the product. I think that's really helpful to the consumer, and it's also helpful in that it allows companies to learn from each other. If each company is studying these things on its own and is afraid to show what it's finding to others because of competition, we can't learn about these things as a scientific community. I think the second thing, and I've said it many times, but it's hard enough between the companies in the US to handle this crazy commercial race. But in theory, we could pass laws like I just described that help to rein the companies in. But it's almost impossible to do that if we have an authoritarian adversary who's out there building the technology almost as fast as we are, right? It creates a terrible dilemma. And I think we need to cut off the supply chain. We're years ahead of them in chips. We really can. We really can cut off the supply chain. And that gives us the time and the buffer to deal with these dangers properly. And then third, I think we need to think about the distribution of benefits of this technology. I see AI creating a world where there's enormous economic growth, right? We can cure cancer. We can, develop energy for cheaper. We can develop enormous new materials, and those things will grow the economy enormously. But precisely because AI does the jobs that, many current white-collar workers do, that there's going to be some concentration of this wealth from labor to capital. And so we're going to have this weird world that we've really never seen before where, we have enormous wealth, but distribution is a problem. That's a different world. I don't think it's an ideological thing, but I think we just need to adjust to that world.
How would you adjust to that now? Obviously, we don't have that. That's not the reality today. So, how would Congress prepare the country to do that so we're not caught napping and having to do it retroactively?
Maybe the most obvious one is, we kind of need to think about more robust tax policies, and And I don't I don't think this is the tax policies of old. This is for a world where people are trillionaires. We're almost there already with Elon Musk, and I think the effect of AI and the effect of the AI companies is going to make that more extreme. And I say that as one of the people who's benefiting from it, right? If we don't find a well-designed answer to this problem, we may get poorly designed answers, right? We may get, get kind of very aggressive, poorly designed answers. And so I guess my ask would be, look, there's going to be this skew in distribution of wealth. What are ways of handling it that are economically literate and economically sensible, so that we don't get this crazy knee-jerk stuff?
Dario, these are heavy, heavy lifts. Members of Congress I talk to are afraid to even talk about this issue. Like their constituents either are worried about their jobs or pissed about their power bills, or they think it's icky or they're queasy. How do you convince policy lawmakers, both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue, that they must talk about these issues, dig in?
So it's not going to happen in a day. But what I will say is, as we see the effects of AI, I expect the public to understand that AI is bringing us all these wonders, all these medical wonders, all this, abundance. Eventually, we'll get cheap robots that will do everything. But these problems will emerge. People will say, "Where are my jobs?" People will say, "Why is that person a trillionaire and my wage has gone down because I've been de-skilled?" Right? People will ask these questions, and I think it's better if you get ahead of it and you start to think about it now. And by the way, I don't think it'll be a partisan thing. It's not even a partisan thing now. Even people on the two extremes of the political spectrum I've talked to, and it's remarkable how similar the things they say are.
Do you think that any of your fellow future trillionaires will be for this, will discuss it, or will they fight it?
I can't say what anyone else is going to do, right? Like
But
I don't.
You know the future fellow trillionaires. What can you do to bring them along with how you're thinking? As I can tell you, a lot of them aren't there now.
Yeah, I agree. Many are not there now. I mean, there's a wide range of views, and again, I can't speak for anyone else, but I would just say the thing I said before. You can't just go around saying like, okay, we're gonna we're gonna create all this abundance. A lot of it is gonna go to us, and we're gonna be trillionaires, and no one's gonna complain about that. No one's gonna try and do anything, right? If your answer is just screw you, there's nothing we can or should do about this, then that's going to create a lot of discontent. It already has. We're already starting to see the beginnings of it, and it's just going to get worse. And so my view is we should do this because it's the right thing to do. But if I were to talk to others, if that isn't compelling to them, and I hope it is, but if that isn't compelling to them, then I would say, look, you're going to get a mob coming for you if you don't do this in the right way. If you don't do this in the wrong way, in the right way, it's going to happen in a very wrong way.
What should members of Congress be telling their constituents about the state of AI and where we're headed over the next year?
We have an interesting situation in AI in that, people are concerned about it. Broadly, that concern is well justified, but I don't know that it's all that well targeted. There are risks like, say, the water use of AI that if you look into it, AI actually doesn't use that much water. There are many problems with AI, but that's not one of them. And then, of course, people are worried about their power bills, which I think is understandable and kind of well targeted. But I think in the long run, it's not about power bills. It's about enormous abundance and whether they get their piece of the abundance. Maybe power bills is like a little tiny piece of that. So I would say constituents are concerned. But helping to educate them about where things are going, helping to bring them along. Because again, I'd say the same thing. Like, if you don't lead, if you don't say, this is where things are going, and we're looking hard for solutions, even if we don't have all the answers yet, like, we've got your back, we're trying to find the solutions here. I think that will end much better than saying, there's nothing to worry about here, or only looking at these kind of very limited problems.
And the assumption in Washington is because President Trump, David Sachs, and others want to be hands off on AI and have the U.S. win the race against China. Congress seems to have no appetite to intervene. What outline the risks of waiting 3 years to do anything, which seems like the most likely scenario right now, if we're being honest.
Yeah. So, I think if we wait 3 years, like this technology is progressing exponentially, right? 3 years ago in 2023, the models were maybe as smart as like a smart high school student. Now we have engineers at Anthropic where the model writes all the code for them. And the engineer maybe edits it, but we're very close to, mid to high professional level, right? And so that was just in 3 years. If we wait another 3 years, I think we'll get what I call in the essay a country of geniuses in a data center, maybe less than 3 years. And so, 3 years is an eternity in this field. And so I think we absolutely need to act before then. One place where I really have hope is, I think as these problems start to manifest, again, they're not going to be partisan, right? Like, it may start with, one party or one side having an anti-regulatory ideology. But I think as these problems become real, there's going to be a demand among everyone.
And in the note, you outline the different risks, whether it's bioterror or whether it's authoritarian regimes with too many tools to do subversive behavior. How worried are you? I mean, you're obviously worried enough to state it, and you're worried enough to raise it. But in your mind, how likely is that outcome, particularly if we don't do anything for the next 3 years? Is it like a 1% or like, no, if you don't do anything for 3 years, like we could be screwed?
Yeah, it's always hard to tell. One of the things I say in the essay is we just don't know, right? We could look back and we could say, AI driven bioterror, that was, that sounded like it could happen at the time, but it just didn't happen at all. And it's very unpredictable. The way I would say it is we're taking a paranoid stance with respect to our operational behavior with respect to them. We always assume that everything that can go wrong does go wrong. That's how you build things that are reliable, right? If you're building a rocket, you're not like, oh yeah, I'm sure this part will work out. I'm sure this thing will survive the tensile forces. You're like, no, I'm going to do a scenario analysis of this and that and that and the other thing. I'm not going to take anything for granted. And yeah, if government steps in and takes the appropriate actions, then I think our chances of success go up a lot. We'll do the best we can, even if that doesn't happen. But I think a lot of things get easier if our policymakers are not asleep at the wheel.
I think we're getting the hook, Dario. We appreciate you taking time to do this. Memo is fascinating. The manifesto is great. So we appreciate
Thank you for the conversation. How long did you work on the memo?
So I wrote the first draft in 72 hours over winter break. Honestly, my winter break is like I spend the week just zoning out and playing video games. And then like in the last 3 days of winter break, I was like, oh man, I should like try and get something right. And so I wrote for like 72 hours, almost without sleeping.
How much of it was Claude?
Claude did not write any of it. Claude helped me though to do a fair amount of research, and Claude gave feedback. I would say I was the writer and Claude was kind of my editor and my research assistant.
Drop the mic. Thanks for the time.